My name is Rebecca Collins, and I thought a simple family gathering at my mother's house would be harmless, even if deep down I hated going. It was supposed to be just an afternoon of food and chatter, an attempt to prove to everyone that I was still part of the family, even after years of being treated as an outsider. My daughter Ella, only 9 years old, begged me to let her wear the yellow dress we had ironed the night before. Her long, honey brown hair was braided carefully, strands shining under the sunlight as we walked up the driveway. She looked like a little ballerina who had been waiting all week to twirl in front of her relatives. I kissed the top of her head and promised her, "Just smile, sweetheart, and ignore whatever silly comments come our way." I thought that would be enough. But I was wrong. The house was crowded with voices echoing off the walls, the smell of roasted meat mixing with perfume and spilled wine. My mother, Helen Collins, stood at the center like a queen, surveying her court, handing out orders with her clipped tone. My brother Andrew bragged loudly about his new car, while his wife Vanessa scrolled on her phone, smirking at every opportunity to make someone feel small. My sister Monica hovered nearby, eyes narrowing at Ella every time she skipped by with her cousins. I saw it, but tried to dismiss it, telling myself I was just being paranoid the way I always was at these events. The afternoon dragged on until I noticed something that twisted my stomach. I had been speaking to my Aunt Patricia in the kitchen, her warm hand covering mine as she whispered, "Stay strong, Rebecca. You don't have to let them trample over you again." When I glanced toward the living room, Ella was gone. At first, I thought she had gone outside to play. I called her name, forcing cheerfulness into my voice, but the noise of the party swallowed my words. I asked a few people if they had seen her. Shrugs. Vanessa laughed and said, "Maybe she finally realized she doesn't belong here." My chest tightened. I searched room by room, my heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor, the clinking of glasses and laughter behind me like knives digging into my back. Then I heard it, a muffled cry, fragile, coming from upstairs. It was followed by a burst of cruel giggling, a sound that froze my blood. My legs carried me up 2 steps at a time. The corridor was dim, the air thicker, carrying the faint hum of an electric buzz. I knew that sound. My childhood came rushing back, the sting of clippers against my scalp, the humiliation of being forced to sit still while my mother shaved my hair as punishment. I reached the bathroom door and pushed it open. The world tilted. There was Ella, my precious little girl, pinned on a chair by her cousins Zach and Abby, both grinning as if it were a game. Her cheeks glistened with tears, her hands flailing helplessly. And towering over her was my sister Monica, her face twisted with satisfaction, holding buzzing clippers that sent strands of Ella's honey brown hair cascading to the floor. With every pass of the blades, another piece of my daughter's innocence was stolen, the braids I had lovingly tied unraveling into piles of broken strands. Monica was recording it on her phone, laughing smile for the camera princess. "Not so special now, are you?" My heart hammered against my ribs. Breath caught in my throat. I lunged forward, but before I could rip the clippers from Monica's hand, I heard my mother's voice. Helen was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, eyes cold. And she said the words that will haunt me forever. "Rebecca, it's just a joke. Don't overreact." Hair grows back. My knees buckled with rage. My daughter screamed, "Mommy, please make them stop." The sound cracked my soul. I grabbed Ella into my arms, feeling the rough stubble on her scalp still trembling from the vibration of the blades. She buried her face into my chest, sobbing so violently I thought her small body would break apart. My vision blurred with tears, but through them I saw Monica smirking, holding up a fistful of Ella's hair like a trophy, and my mother nodding in approval as if discipline had just been delivered. In that moment, something inside me shattered. I knew this wasn't just cruelty. It was war. When I pressed Ella against my chest in that bathroom, every nerve in my body screamed, not only from the horror of what had just happened, but from memories that had been buried deep for decades. People always assume abuse must leave bruises on the skin, but in my family, the bruises were carved into the mind, subtle enough to deny, yet heavy enough to last a lifetime. I was born the second child, the one my mother Helen never wanted but tolerated because appearances mattered in our small Midwestern town. From the time I could walk, I learned that Andrew, my younger brother, was the sun around which the household revolved. He was praised for breathing, celebrated for mediocrity, while I was criticized for excellence. If I came home with an A, Helen would frown and say, "Don't brag. Andrew will feel bad." If I asked for help with homework, she would wave me off, declaring she was too tired, yet she spent hours ironing Andrew's shirts before his baseball games. I grew up craving crumbs of affection only to be told I was dramatic whenever I cried. My sister Monica, only a few years younger than me, saw early on which way the wind blew. Instead of standing beside me, she chose to mirror our mother's cruelty, aligning herself with the powerful. By middle school, she had perfected the sneer, the laugh at my expense, the whispered rumor behind my back, and Helen adored it. "You girls are so different," she would say, patting Monica's cheek. "At least one of you knows how to have fun." Fun meant mocking me, humiliating me sometimes, even teaming up with Andrew to lock me outside in the rain. But the worst, the very worst, was the hair. When I was 12, Helen decided I had become too vain, too focused on brushing my hair in the mirror. One evening after dinner, she dragged me into the bathroom, sat me on a stool, and snapped on a pair of clippers. The buzzing filled my ears like a swarm of wasps. I remember gripping the sides of the chair, tears rolling down my cheeks while Andrew and Monica peeked in the doorway and laughed. I begged her to stop, but she carved straight through the middle of my scalp, muttering about humility and obedience. By the time she finished, I was bald, humiliated, and broken. At school, kids called me Cancer Girl classmates, snickered, teachers looked away. Helen told anyone who asked that it had been a summer haircut. Even now, I can still feel the phantom vibration against my skull. That moment defined me, taught me that in our family, pain could be dismissed as discipline, cruelty rebranded as love. I swore I would never allow that cycle to touch my children. Yet here I was, decades later, watching history repeat itself on Ella. After I left home at 18, I built walls around my life. I studied nursing, moved into a cramped apartment, and swore I would never rely on Helen or the family again. But life had a way of circling back. I married David Miller at 27, thinking I had finally found someone who saw me not the scapegoat version my family had built. We were happy for a few years, but the stress of his job, his constant travel, and my late-night hospital shifts tore holes into the marriage. By the time Ella was 5, we were divorced. David moved 2 states away and sent cards on birthdays, sometimes money, but he was never truly present. That absence gave Helen new ammunition. "You can't keep a husband," she hissed once, "just like you can't keep control of your life." She never said it kindly, always twisting the knife. Despite everything, I still showed up at family gatherings because I wanted Ella to have cousins to believe she belonged to something larger. I wanted to protect her from the truth that our family was a nest of favoritism and venom, but children sense more than we admit. Ella often asked, "Why does Grandma always smile at Zach and Abby, but not me?" I would hug her and say, "Because you shine differently, sweetheart. Some people are blinded by it." Inside, though, I was terrified. Monica had always resented me, but her resentment toward Ella was sharper, like she viewed my daughter as a chance to continue punishing me by proxy. Every time Ella twirled in her ballet shoes, Monica rolled her eyes. Every time Ella's artwork was praised by a teacher, Monica made some cutting remark about talent skipping generations. And Helen laughed. She laughed because that cruelty fed her control, because it reinforced the unspoken rule of our family. Rebecca is always wrong, and anyone who hurts her must be right. That was the backdrop to every gathering, the storm clouds gathering just out of sight. And that was why when I heard the buzzing of clippers in that upstairs hallway, I knew. I knew before I opened the door that my nightmare was repeating itself, that my little girl was being forced to live the humiliation I had carried for 30 years. It was no accident. It was the script of our family rehearsed again and again. The difference now was me. I was no longer the trembling child gripping a chair. I was a mother, and the rage boiling in my veins would not allow the story to end the same way. The minutes after I pulled Ella from that bathroom felt like a lifetime compressed into pounding heartbeats, but the truth is, the tension had been simmering long before the clippers ever buzzed. From the moment we walked into Helen's house, something in the air told me we were walking into enemy territory. The Collins home was a shrine to appearances, every photo on the walls carefully curated to show smiling grandchildren and polished vacations. But none of those frames ever included me. My mother claimed the pictures were chosen at random, but I noticed the pattern years ago, Andrew's children on every mantle, Monica beaming in a dozen portraits, Helen herself in almost every shot while I was reduced to a corner frame from my college graduation placed behind a lamp where no one could see. As Ella and I slipped off our coats, Helen's eyes traveled over us with that same disapproval she had worn my whole life. She complimented Vanessa's earrings, hugged Zach and Abby with exaggerated affection, then looked at Ella's yellow dress and said flatly, "Bright color for such pale skin. Makes her look washed out." Ella's smile faltered, but she whispered to me, "It's okay, Mommy," as if she needed to comfort me. That is the kind of child she is, resilient beyond her years, but it broke me inside. We sat at the dining table, and Andrew launched into another monologue about his promotion. Vanessa chimed in with smug corrections about their new house, their pool, their vacations. Every word was designed to remind me that in their eyes, I was a failure who had chosen a hard life while they had chosen success. Helen egged them on, nodding proudly, clinking her glass of wine against Andrew's as though he were the crown prince. When I tried to mention Ella's ballet recital, Monica cut in with a sharp laugh. "Ballet? That's cute. Real kids play sports. My Zach's already being scouted for baseball." Helen clapped her hands together, delighted, as if the matter were settled. I swallowed my pride, pressing my hand against Ella's under the table. Her fingers squeezed mine back, small but steady, a silent reminder that we were in this together. But each small humiliation piled on top of the last, until my chest felt like a balloon ready to burst. The food arrived, platters of roast beef and mashed potatoes, but I could barely taste anything past the bitterness in my throat. I caught Monica watching Ella with narrowed eyes every time she twirled her fork, absent-mindedly humming a ballet tune under her breath. It was not just annoyance. It was something darker envy sharpened into a blade. I knew that look because I had seen it my whole life on Monica's face when I brought home a good grade on Helen's face when I dared to dream beyond her control. The party carried on, laughter bouncing off the walls, but to me, it all sounded hollow, like a stage play where the lines were rehearsed and the roles assigned. Andrew bragged, Vanessa smirked, Monica whispered cruel jokes that made Helen laugh too loud. Every detail was designed to remind me of my place. Even Patricia, my aunt, sat quietly in the corner, her eyes filled with sympathy but her lips pressed shut. She had seen it all before and knew any protest would be drowned out. When dessert was served, Ella leaned against me and whispered, "Mommy, can I go upstairs to use the bathroom?" I nodded, brushing a kiss across her forehead, never imagining that moment would open the door to a nightmare. If I had trusted my instincts, if I had followed her immediately, maybe I could have stopped what came next. Instead, I stayed at the table, pretending to laugh at one of Andrew's stories, trying to hold the fragile illusion of family together for just one more evening. But even then, the cracks were widening. Vanessa leaned close to Monica and muttered something I couldn't hear. They both glanced at Ella's empty chair, and Monica's lips curved into a smile that made my stomach tighten. I tried to shake it off, but unease gnawed at me. Patricia caught my eye, her brow furrowed, and mouthed, "Watch her." I rose halfway from my seat, but Helen's voice snapped across the table. "Sit down, Rebecca. Don't hover. Ella's old enough to handle herself." It sounded like concern on the surface, but her tone dripped with disdain, reminding me that in her view, I was overprotective, dramatic, weak. I sank back down, torn between obedience and instinct, and that hesitation cost me more than I can ever forgive myself for. A few minutes later, the sound of muffled laughter floated down the staircase, laughter with an edge of cruelty I recognized instantly. It was the same laughter that had followed me through childhood, echoing behind closed doors when I was locked outside in the rain or when my hair was shaved against my will. My pulse quickened, my fork clattering against the plate. I excused myself, heart racing, as I hurried toward the stairs. That was the moment when tension hardened into dread, when every step upward felt like a march back into the past. And when I reached the top and heard the buzzing, all the laughter downstairs blurred into white noise. I knew in my bones that Ella was about to become the next casualty of the Collins family cruelty, and the rage swelling inside me had only just begun to rise. The buzzing sound was unmistakable. It sliced through the upstairs hallway like a hornet trapped in a jar. My heart lurched as I sprinted the last few steps, dread clawing at my chest. I pushed the bathroom door open, and the world I knew caved in. Ella sat on a low stool, her little arms pinned by Caleb and Sophie, her eyes wide and wet with terror. Above her stood Monica, her hand steady on the clippers as chunks of golden hair fell into the sink, like pieces of sunlight being murdered. She was laughing, filming with her phone in the other hand, her voice dripping with triumph. "Say goodbye to your princess curls, Ella. Let's see how special you feel now." My scream ripped from my throat before I even realized it, raw and jagged. "Stop it! Get away from her!" The clippers paused mid-buzz, but Monica didn't flinch. She smirked, sliding her phone to capture my horror. "Relax, Rebecca. It's just hair." She was getting too full of herself anyway. Ella's sobs broke me. Her small shoulders shook violently, strands of hair clinging to her tear-streaked face. I lunged forward, shoving Caleb and Sophie aside. They stumbled back, guilty but too caught up in their mother's approval to resist. I yanked the clippers from Monica's hand, slamming them onto the counter so hard the plastic cracked. My hands trembled as I pulled Ella into my arms, her bare scalp patchy and raw, her humiliation bleeding into my skin. "How dare you!" I hissed, my voice low. "Dangerous." Monica laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Oh, please, don't be so dramatic. You think you're better than us, raising her like some ballerina queen." She needed a dose of reality. Heavy footsteps echoed behind me. Helen appeared in the doorway, wine glass in hand, her expression infuriatingly calm. "Rebecca," she sighed as though I were the one causing the disruption. "What is all this noise?" I turned, my fury boiling over. "Look at her. Look at what Monica did." Helen's eyes flicked to Ella, then back to me. She didn't gasp, didn't recoil in shock. Instead, her lips curled into that familiar smirk. "It's just a joke. Hair grows back. Don't overreact." My jaw dropped. Ella clung to me, shaking, whispering, "Mommy, take me home," but Helen only shrugged. "You always were too sensitive." Monica was teaching her a lesson. Maybe now she'll stop acting superior. Something inside me snapped. Years of humiliation, of being told to stay quiet, of watching my mother worship Andrew and excuse Monica, all of it combusted in a single breath. A lesson I spat. "This is abuse. You let her torture my child." Monica rolled her eyes, arms crossed, perfectly confident with Helen at her side. "Oh, come on, I barely touched her. She'll thank me one day." The rage in my chest was volcanic. I scooped Ella into my arms and stormed downstairs. The party chatter faltered as we entered the room, freezing at the sight of Ella's shorn head, her cheeks streaked with tears. Andrew lowered his glass, frowning. Vanessa gasped theatrically, but said nothing. Patricia rose halfway from her chair, her face pale with horror. "What happened?" she demanded, though the answer was obvious. "Ask your precious sister." I spat, my voice shaking with fury. Monica shaved Ella's head, and our mother stood there and laughed. Gasps rippled around the room. Andrew scowled but directed his anger at me, not Monica. "Rebecca, stop making a scene. You always exaggerate." My grip on Ella tightened. "Exaggerate. Look at her. Look what they did." Monica sauntered in behind me, utterly unashamed. "She's fine. Everyone needs to toughen up once in a while." Helen's voice cut through the tension, calm but poisonous. "Rebecca, sit down. Stop embarrassing yourself in front of the family." For a moment, the room tilted. I felt dizzy, suffocated by the walls closing in by the years of being painted as hysterical. But then, Ella's tiny hand clutched my sleeve, her whisper, "Desperate, please, don't let them hurt me again." That plea burned every trace of doubt from my soul. I turned, my voice steady now, like steel sharpened in fire. "No, I'm done sitting down. I'm done letting you destroy everything good. This ends now." The room exploded into overlapping voices. Andrew yelling, Vanessa sneering, Monica mocking Helen, dismissing, but all of it faded into background noise. The only thing that mattered was the trembling child in my arms and the certainty that I would never again let this family dictate our lives. The living room became a stage, and every eye was on us. Ella buried her face against my shoulder, her sobs muffled by the fabric of my dress, while I stood in the center, raw fury pulsing through me. The chandelier above buzzed faintly, its golden light pooling over polished wood floors, catching the strands of my daughter's hair still clinging to my arms. Silence hung for a second too long before Andrew broke it, his voice dripping with disdain. You've always had a talent for drama, Rebecca, turning a small thing into a public trial. My laugh came out sharp, almost a bark. A small thing my daughter was assaulted in your house, Andrew, in front of everyone. And Mom. I swung my gaze to Helen, whose expression hadn't wavered from that maddening calm. Mom told me to sit down and shut up. Vanessa leaned against Andrew's arm, her manicured nails tapping his sleeve. Honestly, Rebecca, you make everything about yourself. Maybe if you disciplined Ella properly, Monica wouldn't have had to step in. My knees nearly buckled from the audacity. Step in. You call holding down a 9-year-old child and shaving her head a discipline. Patricia finally rose to her feet, her voice shaking. This isn't discipline. This is cruelty. I saw Ella run upstairs happy an hour ago, and now look at her broken. Monica chuckled from the doorway, arms folded, her phone still in hand. Don't be so dramatic, Aunt Patricia. Kids bounce back, and honestly, Ella's been flaunting herself for too long. A little humility will do her good. That single word, humility, snapped the last thread of restraint inside me. Humility. You're jealous of a child because she dares to shine brighter than your kids. Monica's smile faltered just for a second before she sneered. Jealous, please. I'm protecting this family from your poison, just like Mom always had to. My breath hitched. There it was again, the same script they'd used on me my entire life. Poison. Problem. Too sensitive. Helen stepped forward, her voice cool and deliberate. Rebecca, your sister is right. You've always been difficult. Ever since you were a teenager. We covered for you more times than I can count. My hands shook not from fear anymore, but from the weight of years crashing back at once. Covered for me? You mean silenced me. You mean punished me every time I dared to speak truth. Helen's eyes narrowed, and for the first time her mask slipped. Don't forget who kept you under this roof when no one else would. You think David left because of his work? He left because you're impossible. The words stung, but then I saw David's shadow flicker across the edge of my memory, the man who had once loved me, who had withered under Helen's endless criticisms too. I drew a breath. No, Mom. He left because he couldn't survive in this toxic swamp you call family. A murmur rippled through the room. Vanessa's face twisted in disgust. Andrew's jaw tightened. Monica smirked wider. And then Helen made the fatal slip. She lifted her chin, eyes glinting, and hissed. You think Ella is so perfect, don't you? You think she's better than Monica's kids. Maybe you should tell everyone the truth about who her father really is. My stomach plunged. The room gasped collectively. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. I froze, heat and ice colliding inside me. What did you just say? I demanded, my voice low, trembling with rage. Helen's lips curled into a cruel smile. You know exactly what I mean. David isn't her father. You think you can hide your mistakes forever? Not in this family. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. Ella shifted in my arms, confused, sensing the tension, but not the meaning. Monica leaned in with venom. See? She doesn't even belong to us, just like her mother. Patricia's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with outrage. Helen, how dare you weaponize that against your own granddaughter? The room exploded into overlapping shouts. Andrew shouting that I was selfish Vanessa, claiming Ella was an embarrassment, Monica laughing like it was the best show she'd ever starred in, and Helen, steady as stone, insisting I was the disgrace, not them. My vision tunneled. I felt every scar from my childhood, every insult, every dismissal. all stacking up in this one horrific tableau. But beneath it all, I felt Ella's trembling hand on my collarbone, her silent plea anchoring me. I raised my voice above the din, sharp and commanding. Enough. The noise died in jagged fragments. I shifted Ella to my other hip and pointed at each of them one by one. Monica, you laid hands on my child. Andrew, Vanessa, you stood by and cheered. Mom, you not only allowed it, you defended it. You've all shown me exactly who you are. My voice cracked once, then hardened like iron. You will never touch her again. And you will never control me again. Patricia stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. Rebecca, you don't have to fight them alone anymore. For the first time that night, I felt the faintest flicker of hope, but Helen only sneered. You think you can run from us? Family is blood. You can't erase that. I met her gaze, squarely steady and unflinching. Blood isn't family. Not tonight, not ever again. The room hadn't recovered from Helen's revelation when the air shifted again. I felt Ella stiffen in my arms, her small voice barely audible. Mommy, is Grandpa still alive? The question pierced me like a blade. My father, long gone, was the one person who had shown me kindness as a child. Helen's lips thinned. Don't fill her head with lies. Your father left us years ago. But Patricia's voice cracked like thunder. That's not true, Helen. He didn't leave you, drove him away, and Rebecca deserves to know. Heads whipped toward Patricia. She was trembling but unflinching, her eyes burning into her sister. Your father found out what you did with the inheritance, Helen. He confronted you, and the next morning he was gone. You told everyone he abandoned us, but I saw the paperwork you forced him out, legally silencing him with threats. A collective gasp tore through the room. My throat dried. What inheritance? Patricia's gaze softened with grief. Your father left a trust in your name, Rebecca, for you and your children. Helen concealed it. She diverted it through Andrew to keep you under control. A dizzying wave washed over me. All the years of struggling, scraping by as a single mom while Andrew flaunted new cars and vacations. All the lectures about how I should be grateful for hand-me-downs. It all snapped into clarity. Monica smirked. Oh, please. Even if that's true, what are you going to do about it now? The money's long gone. Patricia shook her head firmly. Not gone. Hidden. I have copies of the documents. The room erupted again, Andrew barking denials. Vanessa shrieking, Helen shouting at Patricia to shut her mouth. Monica tried to drown it out with cruel laughter. But for once, I wasn't drowning. I was rising. My hands steadied as I placed Ella gently onto the sofa beside Patricia. Then I straightened and faced the family head-on. You've stolen from me. You've humiliated my child. And you expect me to bow down. Not anymore. Helen's voice rose shrill now. You ungrateful girl. Everything we did was to keep this family together. I shook my head slowly, my words deliberate, surgical. No, everything you did was to keep me small, to feed your golden children and starve me of every chance. But you made one mistake tonight. The room hushed, tension snapping taut. I pointed at Monica, whose phone still glowed in her hand. You recorded it, proof of abuse, proof of conspiracy, and I will use it. Monica faltered, her thumb hovering over the screen. You can't. Oh, I can. I cut her off my voice steal. Every second of Ella screaming, every word you laughed, every sip of wine Mom took while she watched, it's all evidence. And I'll make sure the world sees it if I have to. For the first time, Helen's face cracked her eyes, narrowing with something dangerously close to fear. Andrew barked. You wouldn't dare. I met his glare without blinking. Watch me. Patricia's hand gripped mine. Rebecca, we'll go to the authorities together. I'll testify. The tide shifted subtly but undeniably. Vanessa muttered, this is ridiculous, but her voice wavered. Caleb and Sophie clung to her skirt, wide-eyed, now no longer accomplices but frightened children. Monica's smirk collapsed into a mask of rage. You'll ruin us all. No, I replied evenly. You ruined yourselves. Tonight just pulled the curtain back. Helen's voice cracked desperate. If you do this, Rebecca, you're no longer my daughter. I inhaled, calm and resolute. I stopped being your daughter the moment you laughed at my child's pain. The words landed like a gavel, final and absolute. Silence spread, broken only by Ella's small, steadying breath as she reached for my hand. I held it tight, letting her strength seep into me. Patricia lifted her chin. It's time, Rebecca. No more secrets. No more chains. For the first time in my life, I felt the chains loosen. And instead of fear, there was clarity. They thought they could bury me with shame, but they'd handed me the shovel to dig us both free. The next morning, the house was silent, except for the sound of Ella's shallow breathing as she slept curled against me on the couch of Patricia's guest room. I hadn't closed my eyes all night. Every time I tried, I saw her face in that bathroom mirror, terrified, stripped, humiliated. And every time I saw Helen's smirk, Monica's laughter, Andrew's cold dismissal. My stomach twisted, but instead of breaking me, the rage hardened into resolve. I reached for my phone. There were messages already from Monica, from Andrew, from even Helen. Threats disguised as concern. Don't escalate this, Rebecca. Think of the family. We can fix it privately. I deleted them one by one. Then I dialed Karen Brooks. She answered on the first ring. Rebecca. What happened? My voice shook at first, then steadied. I need your help. It's about Ella. About my family. And I have evidence. Within 2 hours, I was sitting in Karen's office downtown. Ella sat beside me, coloring quietly, her scalp hidden under a soft knit cap Patricia had given her. I slid Monica's video across the desk. Karen watched it in silence, her jaw tightening with every second of the footage. When it ended, she looked up, eyes sharp as glass. This is child abuse. Criminal, civil, there's no question. And if what Patricia told me about the trust is true, we're also dealing with financial fraud. The words felt heavy, but also liberating. For years, I had carried the weight of being the problem. Now, for the first time, the blame sat exactly where it belonged. What do we do first? I asked. Karen leaned forward. First, we protect Ella. I'll file for a protective order against Monica and Helen today. Second, we document everything. Every message, every incident, every memory. And third, we go after the trust. If there's money hidden, we'll find it. Her confidence lit something inside me I thought I'd lost. For the first time in decades, I felt less alone. That afternoon, I took Ella to meet Dr. Samuel Bennett, a child psychologist Karen recommended. Ella sat in the corner, at first silent, clutching her stuffed rabbit. But when Dr. Bennett gently asked what had happened, she whispered, "My aunt made me ugly." My heart cracked open, but Dr. Bennett leaned in with warmth. Ella, nothing they did can make you ugly. What they did was wrong, and it says everything about them, nothing about you. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but for the first time since that night, I saw a flicker of relief in her eyes. Over the next hour, Dr. Bennett explained trauma therapy, resilience building, and how Ella could reclaim her sense of safety. She's strong, he told me quietly afterward. With support, she'll heal, but you need to draw hard boundaries. No contact with those who hurt her. I nodded. That's already decided. Back at Patricia's, I spread documents across the dining table, old letters, photos, even scraps of bills Andrew had bragged about years ago. Patricia helped piece it together. Look here, she pointed. This account in Andrew's name opened the same month Helen told you Dad left. And these withdrawals, hundreds of thousands, match the trust's schedule. My chest tightened. They've been living off my inheritance for decades. Patricia squeezed my hand. But now you have proof, and Karen will know how to use it. As night fell, I sat with Ella by the window, the city lights twinkling like a promise. She leaned against me, her voice small. Are we safe here, Mommy? I kissed her forehead, my voice steady. Yes, baby, we're safe. And I promise we'll never go back there. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Helen. You're making a mistake. Family is forever. I stared at it, then typed my reply with shaking hands that felt lighter with every word. No, Mom. Abuse is forever if I allow it. But I won't. Not anymore. I hit send, blocked her number, and exhaled. The chains that had bound me since childhood had finally snapped. This was no longer about survival. This was about justice, and for the first time I was ready to fight. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, tense phone calls, and long nights sitting by Ella's bed as she tried to sleep through the nightmares. But each sunrise brought a little more clarity, a little more strength. Karen moved fast. Within 48 hours, a temporary restraining order was filed against Monica and Helen. The judge granted it without hesitation after watching the video. I would never forget the sight of Monica's smirk vanishing as the bailiff handed her the paperwork at her doorstep. Helen, too, received her copy. She tore it up on the porch, screaming that I had betrayed the family. For once, her fury didn't make me flinch. It made me breathe easier. At Patricia's kitchen table, Karen spread out the trust documents she'd subpoenaed. Here's the trail, she explained, tapping the highlighted lines. Andrew was funneling money into shell accounts with Helen as co-signer. This isn't just theft, it's fraud. We can prove it. My stomach churned as I read the figures. Hundreds of thousands siphoned every year. Vacations, cars, college funds for Caleb and Sophie. All of it carved from money meant to support me and Ella. Will they go to jail? I asked quietly. Karen's eyes were steady. If the DA picks this up, very likely. At minimum, restitution. And with Monica's video, their credibility is shredded. Patricia reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You see, Rebecca? They can't bury the truth forever. But the family didn't surrender quietly. Andrew called from blocked numbers, leaving voicemails filled with venom. You think you're clever. You'll regret this when we're done with you. Vanessa posted cryptic messages on social media, painting me as unstable, attention-hungry. And Helen wrote letters handwritten full of scripture, twisted into weapons, slipped into Patricia's mailbox at night. Karen told me to keep them all. Every threat is another nail in their coffin. Meanwhile, Ella slowly began to reclaim herself. Dr. Bennett met with her twice a week. One evening, she showed me a drawing she'd made herself on stage in a ballet costume, hair short but crowned with flowers. Do you like it, Mommy? She asked shyly. Tears burned my eyes. I love it, baby. You're beautiful. Always. Still, the damage lingered. She flinched at loud noises, panicked if I left the room for too long. But each time she lifted her chin a little higher. I knew we were moving forward. A week later, Karen called with news. The DA's office is interested. They want to pursue charges, fraud, child endangerment assault. I pressed the phone to my ear, hardly daring to breathe. It's really happening? It's really happening, she confirmed. That night, as Ella slept, I sat by the window with Patricia. The city outside felt quieter than usual, as though it, too, were holding its breath. Do you ever regret cutting ties? I asked her. She smiled sadly. Regret the years I stayed, yes. Regret leaving, never. The moment I left, I finally began to live. Her words anchored me. For so long, I had believed breaking away was betrayal. Now, I saw it was survival. 2 days later, detectives arrived at Andrew's house. They walked out carrying boxes of financial records, Helen shouting obscenities from the driveway, Monica filming herself screaming about family betrayal. The neighbors watched phones out recording every second. By nightfall, the clips were circulating online. Strangers condemned them in comments, their smug facade crumbling under public scrutiny. I sat with Ella on Patricia's couch watching the coverage. She leaned against me and whispered, They can't hurt us now, right? I kissed the top of her head, my voice firm. No, sweetheart, they can't. The fallout spread quickly. Andrew's company suspended him pending investigation. Vanessa deleted her accounts in shame. Monica's so-called friends distanced themselves overnight. And Helen, once the matriarch who commanded every room, was reduced to a figure of ridicule. Her voice replayed in clips online. It's just a joke. Hair grows back. Each time I heard it, I felt the sting lessen. The wound was still raw, but healing had begun. Karen called again. They'll fight hard in court, Rebecca. But with Patricia's testimony, Ella's therapist, and the video, we have a strong case. I stared out the window at the city lights, Ella's steady breathing beside me, Patricia humming softly in the kitchen. For the first time in decades, I felt not just like a survivor, but like a fighter. The storm was far from over, but the tide had turned. And this time it was on my side. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and cold marble, a mixture of history and judgment. As I walked through the doors with Karen at my side, Ella clutched my hand tightly. Her knit cap covered the hair, just starting to grow back, but her eyes, though nervous, held a spark of bravery I hadn't seen in weeks. Patricia walked on my other side, steady as a shield. We took our seats at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle sat Helen, rigid in a navy suit that looked borrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. Monica lounged with false bravado, scrolling on her phone until the bailiff barked at her. Andrew sat stiff, jaw clenched, Vanessa whispering frantically in his ear. I felt my stomach twist, but then Karen leaned in. Breathe. Remember, they're not untouchable anymore. When the judge entered the room, snapped to attention, the DA began with the trust case. Your Honor, the Collins family systematically diverted funds from a trust created for Rebecca Collins by her late father. We present financial statements, co-signed documents, and testimony from Patricia Reed. Patricia stepped to the stand, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She detailed how Helen had manipulated legal papers, funneled money into Andrew's accounts, and silenced dissent. Helen's attorney objected repeatedly, but each objection was overruled as Karen and the DA produced document after document. My chest swelled with vindication. For once, the truth was not being buried. Then came the moment I dreaded most, the child abuse charges. The DA cued the monitor and Monica's video filled the courtroom. Ella's terrified screams echoed against the walls. Monica laughing, Helen in the background sipping wine. The jury visibly recoiled. One woman covered her mouth, another shook her head in disbelief. Ella's hand gripped mine so tightly my fingers tingled, but I squeezed back, whispering, "It's okay, baby. They need to see." Monica's smirk faltered for the first time. Helen's face turned pale, her lips trembling as if she hadn't expected her cruelty to sound so damning when replayed in this sacred hall. The defense scrambled. Helen's lawyer insisted it was family discipline taken out of context. Monica claimed it was a harmless prank. Andrew said nothing, eyes fixed on the table. Karen rose, her voice clear and cutting. A prank does not leave a child sobbing in terror. Discipline does not require 3 adults to restrain a 9-year-old, and context does not excuse abuse caught on camera. The silence after her words was heavy, undeniable. Then it was my turn. Taking the stand, I felt my knees wobble, but the sight of Ella's trusting eyes steadied me. I told the court about years of gaslighting, about how I'd been silenced as a child, about the night everything changed for Ella. My voice cracked when I described holding her as she cried, but I didn't apologize. For once, my vulnerability was my strength. When cross-examined, Helen's lawyer sneered, "Isn't it true you've always been the difficult one in the family, that your mother supported you financially for years?" I met his gaze evenly. My mother supported herself, with my inheritance. She starved me of what my father left me, and when that wasn't enough, she tried to break my daughter too. That's not support. That's theft and abuse. The jury's eyes softened. The lawyer had no rebuttal. Dr. Bennett testified next, describing Ella's trauma symptoms, the nightmares, the anxiety. His calm authority pierced through the defense's flimsy claims. "This child will carry scars," he said firmly, "but with distance from her abusers, she has every chance to heal." When closing arguments ended, the jury filed out. The wait felt endless. I held Ella close, listening to the echo of footsteps in the hallway, feeling the weight of decades rest on this moment. When the jury returned, my heart hammered in my ears. The foreperson stood. On the charge of child endangerment against Monica Hayes, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud against Helen Collins and Andrew Collins, we find the defendants guilty. Restitution is ordered with sentencing to follow. The words rang like bells in my chest. Helen gasped audibly. Monica cursed under her breath. Andrew slumped in his chair. Vanessa began to sob. Patricia squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "Justice, Rebecca! Finally!" The judge's gavel struck. Court is adjourned. The sound reverberated through me like thunder shattering chains I had carried for 41 years. As we walked out, reporters swarmed the steps. Microphones thrust toward me, questions shouted. I shielded Ella with my arm and spoke only one sentence. No child should ever suffer at the hands of their family. Cameras flashed, but I didn't flinch. Because for the first time, I wasn't hiding. The weeks after the verdict felt strangely quiet, as though the storm that had consumed my life had finally broken and left only clear skies. Helen, Monica, and Andrew awaited sentencing, each confined by restraining orders that kept them far from me and Ella. For the first time in years, my phone didn't buzz with their demands, their manipulations, their venom. The silence was healing. I found a small townhouse on the edge of the city, just big enough for the two of us. The first morning we woke there, Ella raced barefoot across the wooden floors, laughing. The sound was like sunlight after years of gray. We painted her room together, soft lavender walls dotted with stickers she chose herself. "It feels safe," she whispered that night as I tucked her in. "It is safe," I promised. Dr. Bennett continued to see her, and slowly the shadows in her eyes lifted. She returned to ballet class, shy at first, but within weeks she was twirling again, her short hair bouncing, crowned with flowers the other girls gave her. At her recital, as the music swelled and she danced across the stage, I cried openly. Not because of what had been taken, but because of what she had reclaimed. My own healing was slower. Years of believing I was worthless didn't vanish overnight. But each therapy session, each conversation with Patricia and Karen, each moment watching Ella blossom reminded me I was more than the family's scapegoat. I was a mother, a survivor, and now a protector. Patricia visited often, her laughter filling the kitchen as she helped me plant herbs in the small backyard. "Your father would be proud," she said one afternoon, wiping soil from her hands. "You broke the cycle." Her words sank deep. For decades, I had feared becoming like Helen, hard, bitter, cruel. Instead, I had chosen differently. And in choosing differently, I had given Ella the life I once dreamed of. The media storm eventually died down, but not before sparking wider conversations. Articles debated toxic family loyalty, morning shows discussed the danger of dismissing abuse as just jokes. Strangers reached out to me online, sharing their own stories of cutting ties with destructive relatives. For the first time, I felt part of a community that understood. Sentencing day brought closure. Helen received 5 years probation with mandatory counseling. Andrew was ordered to repay restitution, his career in ruins. Monica faced jail time for child endangerment. As the judge read their sentences, I felt no triumph, only release. They could no longer touch us. That night, Ella and I lit candles in the backyard. For Grandpa, she said, her eyes shining. I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. For everyone who should have protected us but couldn't. And for us, for the family we're building. We stood in silence watching the flames dance against the dark until Ella leaned her head against my side. In that moment, I knew the past no longer defined us. Months later, I joined a local support group for survivors of family abuse. Sharing my story was terrifying, but as I spoke, faces around the circle, knotted eyes glistened. When I finished, a woman reached over and squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "You reminded me it's never too late." Driving home that night, I realized this was the final piece of healing, turning pain into purpose. Ella slept soundly in the back seat, her dreams no longer haunted. I glanced at her in the mirror, my heart swelling. "We're free now," I whispered, though she couldn't hear. Free from Helen's grip, free from Monica's cruelty, free from Andrew's greed. Free to define family not by blood, but by love, respect, and choice. And as we pulled into our little driveway, the porch light glowing warmly, I knew this was just the beginning. When I look back now, I see clearly what took me decades to understand. Blood alone does not make a family. Respect does. Kindness does. Safety does. For years, I thought endurance was love, that silence was loyalty, that carrying pain was duty. But I was wrong. Real love protects. Real family heals. And sometimes the bravest act we can take is walking away, closing the door on cruelty and choosing a different future. For those of you watching who are in your 50s, 60s, even 70s, please hear this. It is never too late to break the cycle. Age does not lock you into suffering. Whether you are a parent, a grandparent, or someone who has carried old wounds far too long, You still have the power to set boundaries, to say no, to protect those you love, and to protect yourself. I did it at 41. You can do it too. If this story touched you, I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight? Drop a comment below and share a little piece of your journey. Your words might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear. And if you've ever had to cut ties with toxic relatives, let us know how you found your strength. It could inspire someone still searching for theirs. Don't forget to hit the like button if you believe no child should ever be mocked or harmed by the very people meant to love them. And if you want more stories of courage, justice, and healing, subscribe to this channel. Together we can remind the world, dignity, respect, and chosen family always matter more than blood.